Hey everybody, it's Friday PM. It's Luigi Scarcelli here on First Friday. Tonight we're really excited to have Danny Cashman on the show from the night show up in Bangor. Danny is finishing his multi-year run and had some surprise guests and some really interesting things to talk to us about. As well as Amanda Painter is going to be on the show. Amanda's going to talk a little bit about what's going on up in the stars. It's a great show. Don't miss it. Stick with us. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, we're here with Danny Cashman. I want to thank you so much for being here live from Bangor. Danny, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be coming off a real high at the moment. I mean, it's been basically the talk of not just the town, it's the talk of in Maine. Everybody is going, wow, this was really exceptional. And we'll touch on it soon, but you had a really extra special, awesome surprise guest on. And I'd love to know more about that, but we just wanted to kind of explain to everybody a little bit about your show from the few folks that know a lot now, but may not have known a little bit about it. So you started this show when you were like, I think 17, 18, 19 years old back in Bangor.
Yeah, I started at 19 years old. I think I started talking about it at 18. It was always a dream of mine from the moment I started watching David Letterman at the age of 9 to do what he did. And it's a great thing about Maine is if you want to do something, chances are you can find a way to do it somewhere. So at the age of 19, I started this show, The Night Show, on Bangor's WB affiliate. And it was very small scale. We recorded the first season in the Old Town Community Center. Not exactly ripe for a television production, but we got our feet wet. We learned a lot of mistakes. We learned from those mistakes, and it kind of gave us the foundation to do what we're doing even today. So it was a young age to get started, but I wouldn't have changed it for the world.
Well, I'd actually heard in the research kind of a story about how the original budget for the show, you kept it in a Cool Whip container. Now, this is way back when. So it's good to get that kind of idea of how young you guys were and then kind of how it morphed over the years. But was there funny stories about that?
Yeah, I remember the Cool Whip Bowl, and it was cash. I mean, there was no checking account associated with the show. And trying to cash a check made out to the night show proved to be problematic, so we had to figure that out. And then at one point, I brought my taxes to, I don't know, H&R Block or something like that, and I said, I got this TV show. Do I need to do taxes for the TV show? And the person asked me about how much income it generated, and I told them, and they busted out laughing. And I said, all right, well, I guess the Cool Whip Bowl is where all of the secrets will stay.
Right, exactly. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about, like, as the show morphed, you know, you do PR by day, you're a dad, you have a TV show. How do you juggle all of these different facets of your life? I mean, is it possible to do all of that in one 24-hour period?
No, it's not. But I love everything that I'm doing. I love my job in doing public relations. Every day is a little bit different. And the people I work for at Sutherland Weston give me the freedom to do these passion projects that I have, which one of those is the TV show, and another one is a nonprofit that I co-founded, and I'm the chair of the board now. It's an organization called Dirigo Reads, and it provides books for first graders throughout Maine, including all of the first graders in Portland Public Schools and surrounding communities as well. So those things are things that I just love doing. I worked for a time for Governor John Baldacci, and he said, you work your job from 9 to 5, you work your passion from 5 to 9. And I thought he meant 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. So I just keep going overnight, and apparently that's not what he meant.
How did the new version of the show, and that formed pretty much about 20 years ago?
Would you say around 15 years ago?
15 years ago, okay.
It was 2000. 9, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who said, "Would you ever want to bring the show back?" And I said, "Well, maybe, but it would have to be done right." And I started outlining the way that I would want to do it. And I didn't even realize I had a concept in my head until I started talking about it. But I guess it had just sat there for so long that I had developed this idea of here's how we're going to do it, and this is the way we're going to get it done. And I was very specific and intentional with 3 areas. I wanted to make sure it ran on Channel 5 up here, our CBS station. NBC had Saturday Night Live. They weren't going to bump that. And ABC had college football that always ran late. So I said, it's got to run on the CBS station, has to be a place with an audience, and it has to be shot by a crew that knows what they're doing. I honestly didn't really think about it how difficult it would be to get one of those things done because I didn't think I really wanted to do it again. I figured it was just done. And then this person convinced me to have a conversation with the New England School of Communications at Husson University, and I did, and they were excited about it. So I crossed the street, went to Channel 5, and had a conversation with their program director. After a couple of weeks, he said, "We can give you 11:30 on Saturday nights." I said, "Well, shoot, I'll find a place to do it." So I went to find a place to do it,
Yeah.
and the rest is history. So
Yeah, I mean, it's like a literal stroke of genius in the sense that, I first had seen it in Bar Harbor where I'd go in the summers and we were going, is this in Maine? How is this possible? Because it's so rare that you would have a big theater like this. You have a band. There's just all of these things. And so it's not that it wouldn't have been possible, but it would have been probably a lot more difficult had you not been able to partner with Husson, the School of Communications. You guys have worked hand in hand for that whole amount of time. And it seems as though it was a kind of an instant hit. So yeah.
yeah, we've been fortunate. And when we all sort of agreed between myself and the TV stations and the school, if any of us decided that it wasn't working for us anymore, we were going to stop at the next logical point. We weren't going to argue it. We weren't going to debate it. If it wasn't working, we trusted each other to be truthful about it. And it worked. The school has been really happy, and one of the things you'll see on our retrospective show, our very last episode, and I don't want to jump ahead too much, but this just is a great example. We did a little highlight reel of some fun we had with students at NESCOM and at Husson over the years, and then we revealed behind our flyaway wall a group of alum that had come back just for this last episode. I didn't know how many were there, and just to show you that we're still learning, our cue card guy was standing right in front of my monitor, so I also couldn't see anything. And the flyaway wall went up, and I continued talking, and then I went around the corner of the desk to shake everyone's hand, and there were nearly 3 dozen people there, and they came from far away. Some of them were in Maine, but some of them came from Connecticut and California and Indiana, and they flew in or drove in just to be there for the final show. And it really, I'm not an educator. I would like to be, but I'm not. But I didn't recognize when we first started how impactful that would be to see people work on this show and then go on and do amazing things and stay in touch. So it clearly worked for the students and for the program at NESCOM. It worked for the TV station, and I think this is the greatest ride I ever could have taken doing this show. So it worked for 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, I find that to be super interesting in the sense that it's almost like, yeah, you were a professor in the advanced class because all these people, no, put you in that pigeonhole, yeah. But but I mean, for experiential learning, we actually have a person who has recently got a job here at the station in Portland. He has worked on your show. There's been a lot of people because he went to Husson for television and film. So it's there are folks all over the place. You have your kind of your minions of people that have come from there, learned, and gone to other places. But what I wanted to ask you about in the kind of 15 years of all this, you had like Pat Dempsey, Ed Asner. I know the gentleman who I always want to remember his name because I know him from when I was a kid on Double Dare, and he's got what's his name again? Mark Summers, exactly. And he has a one-man show on Broadway, or at least it was playing up until it was very popular. So And I know we've had a lot of real interesting local folks from 207, Amanda Hill. We see all kinds of people. Has there, like, what was the guest other than David Letterman that you were kind of like the most starstruck, most like, wow, this is, I can't believe this person is on here? Has there been a lot of those, or guests that you really wanted to land, but you never had a chance to?
Letterman was always the one I wanted to land that I didn't think would happen until it did. Um, there were some others, Letterman was always on top of that list, and it was light years ahead of whoever the number two would have been. There are some that I would have liked to have had at some point, people that I look up to or I'm a big fan of. Um, I would have loved to have had Stephen King on the show because he's Mr. Bangor, writes about Bangor and under the name of Derry in his books, and it would have been lovely to have him on the show, but I get it. He's very, very busy, and we just couldn't make it happen. I'm a big fan of the singer Jewel. We reached out to her several times, and that didn't happen. I mentioned Dawson's Creek on the WB. I grew up with a little bit of a crush, or maybe a big crush on Katie Holmes. That never happened. And, probably for the best. I think they sensed I had a little bit of a crush on her, and it probably wasn't a good idea to send her here. Tom Cruise would have come running after me. Um, but we've been really fortunate. I think I've been starstruck, but I spent when I started watching David Letterman when I was 9, it didn't take me very long to start pretending I was a talk show host in my bedroom and doing things that I'm sure my parents would be ashamed about if they knew of them, like talking to nobody in my room as though I was interviewing them, and trying to tell jokes from this desk up against a wall in my room, pretending there was an audience watching me. I mean, I spent a lot of time trying to work on doing this in a place that thankfully nobody saw it. So I sort of, back then and now, emulated the people that I loved watching, Dave and Johnny, and more recently Conan and Jimmy Kimmel. And I don't want to sound too deep about this, but I do think there's a certain surrealness that comes over me when I'm in that position where I just kind of become show Dan, and I try to put on my show face, and then when it's over, I become uh, regular Dan. And so the starstruck piece of it doesn't happen because I got to be show Dan when I first meet them. And in every case, I waited until they were on stage for me to meet them. I didn't meet Ed Asner backstage. I didn't meet Patrick Dempsey backstage. And that's mostly the case with anybody that I've had on the show. I usually wait until they're on stage before I talk with them. And I think that eliminates a little bit of it. I will say when David Letterman walked out, I hadn't seen him yet. I had never talked with him. And I started losing some strength in my legs, and I thought it would be weird if I collapsed in that moment. So I took a brief second to kind of like compose myself, kind of crouch down, take a deep breath, and then come back to reality.
Well, I wanted to give the people out here watching also the enormity of sometimes the crowds in the shows too, because I went to fully packed out in like Westbrook Gorham when you were playing here. That must have been that. I mean, thousands of people or a big group of people all packed in together. So it's not as though you and I are doing this in an intimate stage. Do you get any butterflies or anything? I mean, that's you're doing it out there without a net for not only the people on the couch, but there's a lot of people there right in the audience.
Yeah, we do have a safety net, and that's our audience warm-up guy and our audience liaison. So just like any show that you go see in New York or LA when they have applause signs, we had a guy that's our applause sign, and he's doing this, getting people to applaud. The laughs are genuine because we don't have a laugh guy. We we have an applause guy. So there is a little bit of a safety net there for me. I think if I were doing this without that guy, it would be more difficult and a little bit more challenging. But that guy also goes out and warms up the crowd before I even set foot out there. So he's talking to the crowd, he's making them laugh, telling them logistical things. Our band plays a little bit. And then by the time I come out, we know they're ready to have a good time. So that is a little bit of a safety net. I stopped getting butterflies because of the audience, though. My butterflies come from whether or not I remember everything that's going to happen.
Yes.
I have a rundown on my desk on my computer. I have cue cards. I have little slips of paper. But there's still this element of when I'm standing backstage, I got nothing. I don't have anything in my pockets that tell me what's going on. I don't have anything taped to the wall. And so in that moment, when the theme song's playing, I'm thinking to myself, gosh, I hope we have everything outlined correctly. And if you don't, it's embarrassing. And thankfully, we have a good team in place that always made that happen.
Yeah, and I think as you know, they talk about like the 10,000 hours if you put in to become kind of an expert at it, and year after year you got better, I'm sure. And the butterflies kind of, it becomes old hat. I think it's I read somewhere in my research maybe over 600 episodes. Does that sound right? Yeah.
Dating back to the show in the late 90s, I think we eclipsed 700 episodes. But if we're just talking about this most recent version, 2010 to 2025, it's a hair under 600.
Yeah. And before we go on with the final season, could you just tell the audience a little bit, just to give some promotion to the guys that work with you? Like you have a band. Could you tell a little bit about those guys so they get some credit too?
Of course, Brian Netto and the Night Show Band is our house band, and Brian Netto is not just the name on the band, but he is a genius musically and a heck of a good friend. If people pay really close attention during the show, if they watch every week, you'll notice, or you may notice, that every guest that walks out there has music that they walk out to. And those are chosen for specific reasons. It might be a play on words with their name. It might be something to do with a piece of work that they've done. It might be something else that is very much an Easter egg that you'd have to find. But Brian puts a lot of work into curating that music and making sure the band is ready to perform that music. And they have to back up musicians with frequency. They backed up a friend of your show, Elena Hubble. She performed a couple of original tunes, and her whole band couldn't make it, so our band backed her up, and they learned those charts, and I think that everything came together pretty flawlessly. The amount of curveballs that they are thrown at every taping is challenging, and I think that they are deserving of all sorts of credit in terms of making the show tick. So that's Brian Netto and the Night Show Band, and that involves Mike Borgia on drums, Lincoln Blake on keyboard, David Clark on guitar, Bob Roman on bass, Jim Winters on trombone, Steve Orlovsky on saxophone, and Brian Netto on trumpet. And then we have Mark Nason, who's the announcer on the show, and he's also our audience guy, so he pulls double duty. We have Michael and Jennifer Murphy, who, if you go on our Facebook page and see hundreds and hundreds of photos, they come from the Murphys. Their business is Whittling Fog Photography. And we also have Luke Bushard is one of the executive producers. Rodney Verrill's one of the executive producers. And Sue Potvin is a jack of all trades that does everything from producing segments to being sort of the backstage wrangler and making sure that everybody knows what they're doing and where they're supposed to go. It takes a small army to make a show like this tick. In fact, it takes a large army to make a show like this tick. But because we're Mainers and have Yankee ingenuity, we've done it with a small army. And the team we have in place right now is second to none.
Yeah, we went backstage because we did a piece backstage when you were in Westbrook, Gorham. And we got to see for ourselves. I mean, cables running everywhere, people running craft service. I mean, it was a big event. We were like, wow, this is a lot going on, and we got a chance to touch into it a little bit. What I wanted to talk to you about was that kind of leading into the final season, like a lot of shows, it kind of ends, but you had a very special element to it because you decided you were going to announce, the final season, I think a year in advance, kind of do the lead up. In that year, was there any highs, lows? What did that year feel like? Emotional, different parts to it?
Yeah. Yeah. Choosing to announce it a year out was, a lot of people questioned that, wondering why we would announce it so far out. But Um, because we work with the school and because we have such a big team and because we've done it for, at that point, 14 years, I wanted to make sure that we had a chance to invite back some of our favorite guests and get that last chance at some of the dream guests and be able to kind of wind things down from the school's perspective and make sure that they were in a good place. And we had advertisers that had committed for so long. We wanted to make sure that everything ended smoothly, and I think it worked out just the way we wanted it to. There were a lot of high points. I don't know that there were any low points. People brought it, from guests to our writers to our producers to our band to everybody. They brought it all together. Brian Netto and the Night Show Band surprised me with a performance. The drummer in that band is an old friend of mine. We went to high school together, and he sort of put this band together 15 years ago when I asked him if he would maybe contact a few musicians. I didn't know he was going to contact some all-star musicians and put together this band. Um, but they did a version of Saturday in the Park by Chicago. I love the horn lines in that song. I love the words in that song. I love that song. And Mike, my friend, who I didn't know could sing this well, did the vocals on it and performed it live in front of the audience. It was a complete shock and surprise to me. And that was such a highlight for me. Um, there were some special musical performances actually throughout the year that were just phenomenal, and I won't forget them. We brought back a performance of Christmas Baby Please Come Home, which is my favorite Christmas song. So we had strings and a chorus and extra horns, and it was great. We stopped doing it for a little while. I wish we hadn't, but we brought it back, and it was good to do that. And the guests that came back, and those that appeared for the first time, there was a different feeling to it. People were they brought their A game, and it elevated the entire show. Um, I don't I can't think of any low points really. I'm sure our viewers could, but
Right.
I think everything went pretty well.
I think you did it the right way, and what I really was excited to talk to you about, because we'll be airing this show the night before the big episode with your surprise guest. It's not, as I said before, a surprise really to anybody. It's the talk of all of Maine. Everybody says, "Oh, Danny Cashman." He has David Letterman. So I know you don't really want to talk too much about a lot of the things that are the details of it, in which, I think that'd be great. We want to wait to watch it ourselves. But what was it like having him there? What was kind of the whole lead up? I mean, is it possible to tell us how did this happen? Any of the fun details?
I mean, the how it happened is a classic example of never giving up on something. Um, I mentioned he was always the dream guest, and I was never shy about telling anybody that. And um, I think in every conversation I've ever had with anybody about uh, David Letterman, it's been expressing my admiration and respect, and um, the fact that he's such an inspiration, not just for me, but for so many people. And all of that is true. I've never deviated from that. So I've said that publicly. I've said it privately, and I think um, sometimes moons just align right. And I'm very fortunate to have people in my life that have liked what we've done on this show, and they've been helpful in many different ways. And some of those people helped kind of connect people and dots together to bring this over the finish line. What was it like when he was there? There was a buzz, there was an energy in that room, and that translated from some of the students who might have been, 8, 9 years old when he went off the air 10 years ago, to a definite buzz in the audience even before he came out. They knew something special was about to happen. You're right. Everybody knows now. We've been promoting it. It's been in the
Right.
paper. It's been on
Cat's out of the
TV.
bag. Yeah.
But in the audience that night, nobody knew. They
Yeah.
just knew there was a mystery guest. And even friends of mine who have known, they had to sit there and listen to me talk endlessly about what was on Letterman the night before in high school they never believed this would have happened. They were making guesses that were pretty good. We had Cooper Flag. People were guessing Cooper Flag. People were guessing Bill Belichick because his girlfriend's from Maine. Somebody guessed President Trump. Somebody guessed President Obama. Like the guesses were good,
Yeah.
but I tried to have the same answer for all of them, which was I can't say a word.
Yeah.
And even the two or three people that guessed Letterman, I said something like, don't you think I'd be more excited if you were coming on our show? And so people just didn't expect it. And I hope I never forget the reaction when I announced his name. And then he gave it, you'll see on the show, he gave it a little while before he walked out after I announced him. And the energy level doubled when he walked through the door. And it was a very, very cool night. And it was a unbelievable way to wrap this whole thing up.
Yeah, I mean, from the shots that I saw of it, it looked like it was such a good time. And he sat down with you. Was he on for the first guest, or was it
He's the only guest.
only guest?
In
Yeah,
fact, he could have hosted the whole damn show if he
yeah,
wanted
he's just
to.
that
I would
quick,
have been
right?
fine with it.
Yeah,
He so we talked a little bit longer because he had a lot to say, and that was heartwarming. Everything about it was heartwarming. So we're actually on for an hour tomorrow night when it's on. So at 10:30 on Fox 23, it'll be on for an hour. All of the stations are giving us an hour for this episode. So
so if you're
you'll get to see sort of an
DVRing it,
extended
yeah.
interview with Dave, and he did his homework. I mean, he talked a lot about Bangor and talked a lot about Maine, and he talked a lot about our show and also his own challenges when he gave up his show. Of course, he has other shows now, but um, he he was very, very open, honest, sincere, and funny, and it was a great first date.
Yeah, because he has a show now, but it's so different, obviously, the Netflix than to be like yourself, where you're doing topical humor and it's much more in the day-to-day grind of things. I was going to say, for people out there setting your DVRs, this is not the half-hour episode. This is a full hour, going from 11 till midnight.
10:30 to 11:30 in
10:30
Portland,
to
and
11:30.
then if you're watching us on CBS 13, it's from 1 a.m. to 2 a.m.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a full hour, and it should show that way in the schedule. So if you're setting your DVR, it should get the full hour.
And is this one of the ones well, I should save that because I was going to say if people can see this after the fact on social media, but you don't want to put that out there because you want people to watch it live when it happens.
Well, yeah, we put clips up on social media, but it's never the full show.
Never
So
the
if you
full
want to
show,
see
yeah.
everything that happened, then you
Yep.
have to watch it on
You have to
television.
tune in and watch. So the last show that you'll be doing is kind of a guest-free. It's like a more retrospective. Can you tell people a little bit about that show?
Yeah. So we had I would say four or five, maybe six different segments we were going to figure out which the best three would be to put in this final show. And it really is a look back, a culmination of 15 years, some things that were important to us, and then sort of a highlight reel, if you will, of some of our favorite moments. And I think we hit the right tone based on the feedback we got from the audience that was there that night. It's difficult. I've watched every late night talk show's final episode, from Carson to Leno to Letterman to Conan and they all handled it a little bit differently. And I think that we hit the things that were important to us with our own sort of unique spin, but also it's familiar enough in its tone and content for people to recognize that this is our final show.
So we had one last question from one of our producers. They were saying, after the show goes off the air, do you think you'll now be able to go to bed before midnight? And if so, will you be just staying up and heckling the TV from your couch instead?
No, I keep odd hours for sure. I am an early bird and I'm also a night owl, and those two don't always line up. So I'll still be staying up past midnight. I'll still be watching the late night shows. And I won't be heckling because even I I have an appreciation for everybody who does this kind of a format, and whether that's local, regional, national. It's not easy, and it's not easy from where I sat, and we were very small potatoes compared to the people who do it 5 nights a week on a national scale. Um, I mean, I have my thoughts for sure on what works and what doesn't work, what is gold and what's crap. But for the most part, I appreciate everybody who's doing it, and even the show After Midnight on CBS that's going off this June with Taylor Tomlinson. They carved out their own little section of the late night landscape, and it's sad to see that just go away. Um, so I'll still be watching. I'm anxious to see the John Mulaney show on Netflix that he's been doing. Everybody's Live with John Mulaney. Um, I love that Jon Stewart's back in the space on the Daily Show once a week. Kimmel's my go-to on a weeknight basis, but I still love watching Colbert and Fallon and Myers, and I'm still going to be there. I started before we started this show. I was a super fan. I'm still a super fan, and I don't see that ever going away.
And you have more time to run marathons. I know you were doing a little bit of the marathon running and staying fit.
I signed up for the New York Marathon, which is November 2nd, and I'm gonna tell all my New York friends that I'll be there. It's the only way I can be held accountable to make sure I cross that finish line.
Yes, yeah, and that's a lot of these ones you have to really do well, and other ones to even get into them. So I know you've been serious. Yeah, not so much on this one.
Not if you get what's called a charity bid. If you raise money, they'll let anybody in. So,
well, but yeah, you'd be raising money.
I didn't qualify, but I will gladly take any donations from your audience to help.
Yes, and is that run going to be a charity run? Is there something that we could promote now while we have you?
Sure, absolutely. It's to benefit a team or an organization called Team for Kids. And this organization raises money so that kids in the tri-state area are able to run road races without having to pay the fee if their family can't swing it. So it still gives them the opportunity to train and engage in a competitive, healthy lifestyle activity, but not worry about the financial implications. I think it's a wonderful cause, and I really am touched that they don't accept everybody. There's a limit for these, but I'm touched that they accepted me on their team, and I haven't started raising money yet, but I guess tonight's as good as any. So I'll happily accept any and all donations.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on Friday PM. We're definitely going to be watching tomorrow night. Check your local listings for that. It's going to be playing all through Maine. I know you play in Canada and some parts as well. We've talked about that before. I want to thank you so much for being so gracious to be on our show over these years. We're a little scrappy little show, and you've been very great to us. And so I'm sad to see your show going, but I know we're going to connect on some other things down the road too. And I thank you so much, Danny. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure joining you.
Hey, everybody. It's Luigi. We're out here at First Friday Art Walk. I found an old friend to our shows. He was on our date night show. Achilles. Good to see you, Achilles.
Good to see you.
Achilles is a local personality, stand-up comedian. I think he does everything. And so we wanted to ask him what he's excited to see out here on First Friday. Good to see you, man.
It's good to see you. So what I'm most excited to see out here are some hand-woven handicrafts, particularly some jewel-encrusted mirrors and picture frames.
Interesting. So are you still doing the comedy as much, stand-up comedy?
Absolutely, okay. Yeah. You can catch me occasionally down at High Fidelity. They have a fantastic open mic and trivia combination event Thursday evenings.
Yeah, we're going to be going down there for that. It's interesting. We ran into Achilles. We've talked to Carlo Rojas. Do you know Carlo?
I do. Good friend of mine.
Good friend of yours. And Carlo has talked to us about that. So we're going to come down there and probably film some of it, see what's going on there. Is that what's called Comics Against Humanity?
Comics Against Humanity, absolutely. Okay, yeah. And it's a very fun evening, and I look forward to seeing you there.
Awesome. So just tell us briefly about where could we find this woven crafts? Where are you looking for it?
I'm looking for it. So I don't know exactly where it is, but we've got all manner of artists set up all along the street here, and I'm going to be hunting down this sidewalk for some jewel-encrusted mirrors and picture
Okay.
frames.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Achilles.
Thank
Good
you.
luck finding it, man.
Absolutely.
Check him out every Thursday night, hopefully every Thursday night.
That's right. I'll see you there.
Against Humanity, High Fidelity on Anderson Street in the Bayside area.
That's right.
What's another bigger place around there? Because I always get mixed up. There's so many different parts of Bayside. What's it near? The U-Haul? Is it that side of things?
So it's near Opry. I think that's the bigger venue there.
Yeah, the Seltzer Bar.
Yes.
So get a seltzer, go see this guy.
I'm Ellie Begin.
Ellie, good to see you. And do you do this designer jewelry here?
Yes.
Excellent.
I make it by hand and the pottery too,
And
actually.
the pottery too?
Yeah.
Say hello to the camera.
Hi.
It's Ellie. We're going to take a look at the jewelry here too. And how do you make this? Are you metal smithing this?
I actually use a technique called lost wax, which has been around for about 6,000 years.
Okay.
And you carve a wax model
Yeah.
and then have it cast, basically.
Okay. Interesting.
So I design all of the wax models.
All right. And then you have some metal people do the metal part to it?
So I send it away to be cast.
Yeah,
And
okay.
they essentially, what happens is they take the wax and put a plaster around it
Okay.
and then heat it
Oh.
so that the wax melts out. That's why it's called lost wax.
Okay.
And then they pour molten metal into that cavity.
Yep.
So
And where did you learn this design?
I learned from an amazing teacher, Kate Wolf.
Okay.
Here, actually, she has a studio teaching on the East End.
Yes, I've heard of it. Kate Wolf. Okay.
Yes.
And so these are types of earrings that go from, is it mostly necklaces as well, rings, tourmaline, is that stone? Yeah.
That's actually turquoise, Amazonite,
yes.
and praise.
Oh, okay. Hey everybody, we're back again on a special First Friday edition of Friday PM. I want to thank Danny Cashman once again. He's an excellent guy. I want to thank him so much for the interview. But right now, I'm really excited to introduce my next guest, friend to the show, Amanda Painter. Amanda's been on the show several times talking about what's going to be happening, forecasting a little bit in the zodiac.
Yeah.
A little bit of horoscope stuff. So Amanda has told us a lot about kind of this past winter. We talked a little bit last year, but you've said there's some really interesting new developments coming up this spring.
Yeah, and we just came through like a pretty like funky and gnarly period through like March and April with like eclipses and retrogrades all shaking out. And now things are kind of evening out, but they're also like heating up at the same time.
Okay.
So, right now we're at the heart of Taurus season. Taurus is an earth sign. So, it's a great time for like focusing on things like gardening or like indulging your five senses, getting outdoors, enjoying the flowers, really kind of like settling into like being in your body again after things have been so chaotic.
Yes.
But at the same time, like, right now as we're taping this, like we have a bunch of planets kind of clustering in fire signs.
Okay.
And by the time this airs, one of those planets, Mercury, will be moving from Aries, a fire sign, into Taurus, an earth sign.
Okay.
So you might start to notice just like, if you've been feeling like your brain has kind of been like engaged, ready to go, very alert, it might kind of like chill out a little bit when Mercury moves into Taurus. It kind of has a steadying influence. Might want to really kind of like focus on one thing at a time a lot more.
Okay.
But we have like the planets are finally getting out of their like post-retrograde territory, so they're much more free and clear.
Moving forward.
Much more of a forward movement.
Well, so with Mercury and Taurus, do you find that that's more of, because Taurus is more stable, than Aries, for example. And
Right,
so
right.
Is that more, stable time of looking at, grounded things? I know Taurus is very earthy.
So we have that mix of like the earth and the fire right now. So you have like that energy of the fire, kind of like lighting things up, but then like the stability of the earth and Taurus, kind of like saying, all right, but we have like a handle on reality.
So if people out there don't know, how can they look on your website or other social media to find out more about these things?
Yeah.
And do you post weekly? Do you post blogs? Do you do any things where they can really see more of what's going on?
Yeah, so you can either check for my public posts on Facebook. I also have a secondary Facebook profile that's more related to my business. And my website is amanda-painter.com.
Okay.
So I try to post there regularly, like once a week-ish. Facebook is usually, a little bit more often during the week, a variety of topics.
So you find that one of the bigger things right now is this Mercury kind of transitioning into.
Well, it's one of the things. I mean, it's part
Yeah.
of a bigger
Okay.
picture of, as I mentioned, planets sort of gathering in the fire
Okay.
signs.
Could you tell us more about that?
I would love to. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. So we have Mercury right now in Aries. As I
Okay.
said, the day after this airs, I think, is when it moves into Taurus.
Okay.
Mars is the planet of like action and aggression and like libido and motivation, and that is in Leo, and it has been for a little bit because it had a really long retrograde that went back from Leo to Cancer. So it's been in Leo a little bit. It's going to be in Leo, I think through June.
Yeah.
It's in Leo for a while, and
Yep.
so that's I think really about finally really going for what you want. Really
Exactly.
tapping into courage, do the thing that maybe scares you a little bit, but
Right.
it's like calling to you. But also like keeping tabs on your pride and your ego. Leo can be a little bit dramatic, can be a
Yeah.
little bit sensitive to being snubbed.
Yeah.
But it's also the sign of compassion and generosity. So I think that's, compassion and generosity, I think, are precious as gold, and gold is like another symbol of Leo. So
right. Yep.
keeping that in mind is like Mars wants you to really go forward and go for it.
Yeah.
Also remembering to remember the people who you're with. Be gentle.
I think Leo gets, like all signs, gets a mixed rap, but I always knew them to be in some ways the fullest expression of the human personality, and it's the
A lot
sun.
of vitality, a lot of humanitarianism, a lot of leadership, a lot of generosity, but also, that ability to kind of dramatize things.
Right,
Sometimes they can get a little bit
Yeah.
full or very talkative. I've known some quiet Leos, but I've also known some very, very talkative
You
Leos.
find some quiet Leos, but they're usually those ones that underneath that quiet surface still have that big boisterous Leo. And as an actress, you see a lot of Leos in the world of drama.
All sorts of
and
signs
music
show up in
and
drama.
entertainment. Yeah, exactly. And politics, things like that.
Oh, sure.
Anywhere where that big personality can do well. So that will be in Mars. That Mars will be in Leo.
Mars is Leo right now,
Yeah.
and will be, I think, through June, if I remember
Okay.
correctly. And then Venus, the planet of love, is also in Aries right now. So,
okay.
Venus, Mars, and Mercury are kind of three of the personal planets. So representing mind, kind of like your energy and motivation, and like love and emotions and receptivity for Venus. So having them all in fire signs, it just feels like a lot of energy to me. It's really kind of a lot of vitality. I think Venus and Aries is kind of just lighting a fire under, really attracting who and what you want, right?
Yeah.
I think Venus tends to be associated with kind of like more passive signs, like, Taurus and Libra, very much about relating and welcoming in. But in Aries, she gets a little bit lustier, a little bit more assertive,
Yes, that's the difference.
less passive. So I feel like to balance the Venus and the Aries energies together, there's something about like, making that step toward what you want and being very direct about it, but also then kind of stepping back and kind of allowing the space for it to show up. Like you don't have to like pursue, make your intentions known and then let that be met, right?
Well, because Venus, as it expresses itself in Libra, is going to be the opposite of Aries, which expresses itself as Mars. So those are opposites. Now, Venus, as it expresses itself as Taurus, is the neighbor to Aries. So they're a little
very
different.
Pretty different. Yeah. Very different.
But that could add that spark. It also seems like maybe it could be for that Libra out there, especially who's too shy. This could add that for them to go and speak to that person that they maybe met at the coffee shop before.
Exactly. Sort of like just thinking about like sort of like leaning into the energy and then noticing if you've like leaned a little further than you need to. You just say like, okay, well, let me open the floor and let something kind of show up. Give it the space. Yeah.
So but that's that Mercury. Mars is Leo, and then Venus. Now, are those, other than the moon, I always think of those as the most influential planets.
Yeah, well, they're the ones that I think because they relate to very personal facets of our personality. They're the ones that, cycle through the zodiac very quickly. So they relate to our kind of like day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year existence a lot more tangibly. They're easier to notice. Like I said, they relate to parts of our psyche in very kind of personality type ways. Whereas some of the outer planets, the ones that move a lot slower, they tend to express more clearly in like generational, decades long or years long
movements,
trends.
almost,
Yeah.
and trends.
I mean, they still have personal life implications, but it's less about like, oh, what part of my personality does this planet represent? They're more about kind of like instigating or initiating or triggering, events or, if I was going to do like a birth chart reading for you and look at what's happening for you with the planets as they move currently in the sky, I'd be looking at, oh, how are the outer planets, the slow ones, interacting with your personal planets, the fast ones? And that relationship between the fast planets in your personal chart and the slow planets, like when those come into contact, are usually times of big changes.
Okay.
So yeah, there's an interesting interplay between the different types of planets and the speed that they move.
And so when they would say, we're in the age of Aquarius, or we were at one point.
Yeah, that's a whole thing.
Jumbo, right?
I don't know if it's humbug jumbo. It's more like, I think the popular conception of what that means is not quite accurate to what the astrological thing. And I think we're so early in the age of Aquarius that we don't really have a firm grasp on what it is.
What it is and what it means.
Yeah.
And the kind of the upheaval that goes along with it. And
potentially,
like but is there anything of note with the kind of the transitions of the moon? Because we'll hopefully see you next month on our first Friday if you're able to. But within this month, it just cycles so quickly. It's kind of hard to.
Yeah, I'm not gonna give a day-to-day calendar of the moon signs. But you can find that online.
Right,
I will say that pretty much all of the major planets, like the ones that relate to the individual signs, they're all in direct motion right now, except for Pluto, which will be retrograde by the time this comes out. But Pluto, again, moves so slowly. I don't worry too much about its retrogrades unless it's interacting with something else, because it's retrograde a lot, right? It's just kind of like part of the normal condition. But I feel like with so many planets in direct motion, it's just sort of like another signal from the cosmos that it's a good time to move forward on things, especially things that got a little like tangled up during the retrogrades and with the eclipses, and you're kind of sorting through what early in the year and the spring were about. Like May through June is like really looking a lot more clear for kind of like getting shit done and getting your life a little bit more in order, trying to make some progress on things. So it's just, I think, a very like interesting and exciting time when that happens, because often we have a bunch of planets retrograde and it can feel a little bit like we're reviewing this, but I want to move forward with that. So May through June is much more a time of, I think, more clear potential for forward momentum and building on things.
Of your mind.
Yeah.
And so this time of year, are there other things that you find that would be interesting things to do based upon those?
I mean, we're in Maine. It's warming up. It's always about getting outdoors, right? Get outdoors, enjoy the art walk. Yeah, whatever's going on. I will say, like I think I mentioned May 10th, Mercury enters Taurus. So again, that's going to be a little bit more Earth to kind of stabilize and balance, like the quick and more impulsive energy of the fire signs. May 12th, 2 days after that, is the Scorpio full moon. So that's going to be the moon in Scorpio opposite the sun in Taurus.
When they are opposing signs.
Exactly.
So again, for the kind of the simple folks to see, any opposing sign is when they're going to be basically 6 months apart from each other. Then those are the opposite signs. And that's when, and the reason they're opposing is because the energy in the one sign is at its weakest as well.
I'm not sure what you just said, actually, but I will say that,
I know that when because my sun and moon are in opposition. And so when my moon sign is at its strongest, my sun sign is at its weakest.
Okay, I think I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
So
they're opposites.
Right. So what you're saying is like when, if the sun is currently opposite your personal sun sign, you feel like it's a little bit tougher for you to kind of like move through life.
Yeah, I think when it seems as though when you're 6 months from one, the influence of that sign is at its farthest. In the zodiac, but this is where you're saying the sun will be influenced by Taurus and the moon by Scorpio.
Right. And I would say, I think, Opposite signs actually have a lot in common, right? They're
Okay.
the two halves of a polarity. You can think of them as like two sides of a coin.
Okay.
Whereas it's the signs right next to each other that are the most different.
Oh, all
And
right.
so I think there's actually kind of more potential to feel like things are a little challenging to your sun sign.
Yes.
But I mentioned the full moon on May 12th, partly because it is an energy peak.
Okay.
It's going to be kind of like the peak of like you said, that a peak of energy between two opposing signs that have something in common, but they're also opposite each other in the way that you and I are opposite right now. Like you can
Okay.
think of it as like you're facing off against something and you have to kind of negotiate that conversation, right?
Yes. Yes.
So same with a full moon. So I think with Taurus and Scorpio, because they're both fixed signs, you really want to watch out for stubbornness around May 12th,
Yeah.
getting attached to just one way of doing things, paying attention to like physical sensations and any bodily ailments, and if they're indicating any underlying emotions, because Scorpio is a water sign, very much related to your emotions. Taurus is a earth sign, very much related to the physical. So what's that relationship between like how you're feeling physically and how you're feeling emotionally? Is something coming to a head? Are you like in some kind of stalemate and neither one of you wants to budge because you really feel very possessive about what you believe in, what you want to have happen? And just noticing that. And if a situation feels like it's gotten to that kind of, wow, we can't budge, wait till May 13th to try and move forward with it.
Okay.
Sometimes you just got to kind of like let that full moon start to soften, and then you can kind of like find the way forward, find the path of compromise, find the negotiation point a little
So
bit
it's
easier.
within that window of those few days. And
Yeah.
both of those fixed signs, because fixed signs often mean, again, because a lot of our audiences, this is the kind of the
Yeah.
basics. They're fixed in their opinions a lot of times, and that usually
Can be.
kind of so when you have certain signs that are mutable, right? I think that they're the types of signs that their minds can be changed somewhat, or their
Somewhat.
flexibility.
Yeah,
right?
and also I remember one of my teachers telling me with the mutable signs,
Yeah.
that's Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces,
Right.
that they can sometimes kind of like act a little bit more like a fixed sign or act a little bit more like the cardinal sign. So they can get a little bit more stubborn. I think they can really take initiative.
Right.
And then sometimes it's just about the flexibility and
But
the
within
flow.
that,
Yeah.
they're still flexible because they'll be stubborn sometimes and not other times. Whereas
Yeah.
certain signs that are fixed are it somewhat seems as though they're more set in their ways in a sense.
It can be. And,
Yeah.
it's good to remember that anybody can have their moments of feeling stubborn.
Right,
Anybody can have their points where they're more willing to be flexible around certain issues or topics.
Yes.
And that we all have, all these planets all over the place in our charts. We probably have some fixed sign energy.
Right,
We
right.
probably have some mutable sign energy. We probably have some of that initiative and from the cardinal signs. It's just about balance and what's being emphasized, either due to like an event in your life or an event in the astrology. Sometimes you see people together who think, oh, those sun signs aren't compatible at all. How do they make it work? And often it has a lot to do with everything else in their chart. They might have some points of wonderful compatibility with the
Yes.
other planets in their chart. You just don't know it from the sun sign.
Well, and the interesting thing is it can correlate as well to what they're about and their interests. So a couple, for example, that might have a very great Venus, that might correlate to what they like to do. Maybe they like traveling together or things that they love. A couple that might have, for example, if we're just talking about couples, the similar Mars, that they coexist well. They might also be people that are both very directed people and
Right.
ambitious. So those
Which can
things
be
work.
tricky. Like, like if you both have like Mars and Aries, you might both be so like
Right.
headstrong
Yes.
that it's hard to give into the other two.
Right,
Whereas
right.
if you have complementary Mars
Exactly.
signs,
Yes.
this person might be gung-ho when you're happy to take a back seat in
Yeah.
certain situations and
Yeah.
vice versa.
Yeah.
So it's not all about being same, but about finding the places of complementariness.
Complementariness. Yeah, exactly. Well, I always look at it as like those fighting fish. You can't put the two exact same fish together.
Right.
So sometimes, like you would think two people that are both Aries or both have Moon in Aries or Mars in Aries would get along because they're so similar. But yeah, you have to have different approaches to things to make it work.
Exactly. Because if you both have like the exact same needs, like which one of you is going to fill that need for the other one?
Right, exactly.
Or if if like my need is to be absolutely free and your need is to be absolutely secure, and we're a couple, like that can be really hard if the situation is where I need to be free, or the situations where you need to feel secure.
Right.
Where how do you find that balance?
How do you find the balance?
How do you make your partner feel secure while you get your freedom? How do you let your partner be free while you find your security? And that's partly just like basic relationship navigation, but it's interesting to see it play out through the signs and through the planets that are in those signs. And then when you kind of know that, you can start to like find out, oh, I see. When I'm, at a party and I've been drinking, it really feeds into my need for freedom. But that's when my partner needs security the most. So if we can be sensitive to that, then we can communicate better about it and still get our needs met. But we just need to be more explicit in our communication about what's going on and what we need, and I'll be right back, and that kind
and
of
if it's
thing.
a language that people don't even know, because a lot of people don't even know their charts and how it relates to other people's. But once you start learning that language, then you can actually put it together into paragraphs and sentences. So I know we're running short on time. We're about to go outside to talk to some artists to close the show out.
Yeah, I did. I just wanted to cover just some highlights from the rest of the month of May, just so we have that. So after the full moon on the 12th, May 20th, the sun will enter Gemini. So that'll be a shift from the earthy, solid, stable, body-focused sign of Taurus into like the very quick, airy, mental land of Gemini. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, so a lot about communication, socialness, mind moving quicker. Expect communication to pick up the pace with that very social vibe into the month of June. May 24th, Saturn will enter Aries. So that's the planet of like responsibility, structure, discipline, boundaries, containers, moving into a very fiery, nimble sort of sign. So it kind of like shifts the tone of where we need to do the most work, or where we might feel a greater sense of responsibility to others, greater sense of obligation and duty, a need for more discipline, a need to work a little bit harder for the things that we want. If you know your chart, or we want to know your chart and want to know where Saturn wants you to work harder, that's can be an interesting to look at. But I think also Saturn will help offer another steadying influence and all of that really sparkly, lit up Aries and Leo energy that we have going on, all that fiery ambition and impulse in the month of May. May 26th, we have a Gemini new moon conjunct Mercury. So the sun and moon together in Gemini, with Mercury close by. So at that point, I just kind of glanced at that chart quickly. There's going to be a lot of fire and a lot of air energy. So if you think about like what makes a fire burn, you need the spark, and then it needs oxygen, right? So sounds like it could be a very combustible end of the month into June. What are your top two like biggest, most important ideas or inspirations heading into June? I think at late May, like that's the thing to focus on. See if you can buddy up with someone, right? Gemini is the sign of the twins. So in late May, find your buddy, whether it's an accountability buddy, a support buddy, a venting buddy, someone you can create with, really feeding each other's flames in a way that's supportive so you can prevent mental burnout and stay grounded somehow. You need that other person to kind of like sometimes touch base with, to kind of like keep your feet on solid ground, but still moved forward without kind of running around in circles. Like Gemini can get very like stuck in its head, lots of mental, gyrations. And there's not a lot of planets in earth or water signs in late May. So I think that describes the need to take more conscious steps to, and repeated efforts to like fill the well, filling your creative well, filling your emotional well, remembering empathy, remembering to feel and not just think and act. I think when those elements are in short supply in the astrology, it's on us to kind of remember to bring them so that we can balance ourselves out, balance each other out. And then just kind of peeking ahead into June, Jupiter is going to move signs from Gemini to Cancer. So we'll talk about that probably next month. But
we can talk about that.
That's another big planetary sign change.
And then, as you said before, when it's one of these kind of more outer chart types of planets, it has more reverberations, more or less, for longer term, because it's not going to switch right back to the next thing anytime soon. And Jupiter's like sort of like in between the fast planets and the slow planets, so it's often called a transpersonal planet. So instead of being personal or impersonal, transpersonal. So it kind of threads that needle between the inner and the outer kind of cultural context, and it's usually in each sign for
About a year. It's like, I think like 14 months ish, you know,
Yeah, and
something like that. So
I think we should touch on that a lot next month because
yeah,
isn't Jupiter also known to be the planet of luck, affiliated with luck somehow?
luck, opportunity,
Yeah,
optimism,
opportunity,
expansion,
expansion,
all
doors
kinds of
opening
things.
instead of closing.
Yep,
things like
or
that.
things kind of getting exacerbated. If they're not
Yeah,
going well, sometimes
right.
it will just magnifies whatever's there.
Magnifies it.
But often
Interesting, yeah.
it's known as being kind of like a benefic or beneficial
Yeah,
influence
right.
on
And I
things.
think
Yeah.
isn't it with somewhat correlated with Sagittarius?
Yes, it is the
Yeah,
planetary
right.
ruler of Sagittarius. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Amanda.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll see Amanda next month.